Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. For those of you who weren't here for my last speech, just a summary of how I got in the Navy in the first place when I was in the Navy. You may recall I was in graduate school at Penn State, and I had applied to both the Air Force and the Navy to get into the meteorology business in one or the other because I didn't want to get drafted. And halfway through graduate school, I wasn't even done with graduate school, I had 6 more months. The Air Force came and said, congratulations, you've been accepted to Officer Training School. We'll send you to Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas in the middle of summer and make you a meteorologist in the Air Force. That wasn't especially appealing, and I didn't know what I was going to do, but 2 days later, a letter came from the Navy and said, congratulations, you've been accepted for Officer Candidate School in Newport, Rhode Island. Finish your thesis, we'll see you in September. So the choice was very easy. I ended up in the Navy, and I never regretted that decision. Now, while I was at OCS, you may recall that speech I gave a while back where I talked about how I was selected as a leader when I went for my draft physical. That was my first leadership experience in the military. But I had a second one at Officer Candidate School because they found out that I was a weatherman. So they put me in charge of the snow shoveling brigade. Fortunately, it didn't snow that much while I was at OCS, but I was in charge, and it was my job to make sure the pathways got cleared off of any snow that might fall. So I made it through OCS, and then came the issue of where am I going to be sent. There's this person called a detailer in the Navy. The detailer is the person that controls your life because he's the same detailer that sent Tom to Washington, and this particular detailer probably had plans for me. So I talked to the detailer, I said, I know these different places I can go, and I see there's a weather central in Suitland, Maryland. Now, I have a girlfriend who lives in Delaware. It would really be nice if I could get to Suitland, be assigned there. And he said, yes, that would be very nice, but you're going to Guam. Guam? I said, where is Guam? It's on another planet somewhere, figuratively speaking. And here you see the island of Guam, and this was going to be my home for the next year and a half. And I'm going to talk to you about the shock of going to Guam, talk about the professional training I got there, and the quest for knowledge, if you will, and finally the island experience. Now, if you look at the island, it's roughly 30 miles long from north to south, and anywhere from 4 to 9 miles wide. So it's not very big. And nothing's really very close to anything on Guam, if you've ever been there. That's the interesting thing. It's a small island, but it still takes 20 minutes to get to the commissary. And it's the bigger picture. Guam is, on this chart over here, so this map here is right there in the middle of the Western Pacific. So we're really not near anything. So I show up on Guam, someone there to meet me, of course, but I wanted to impress whoever picked me up. So what am I wearing? The warmest uniform the Navy offers is service dress blue. On Guam, 90 degrees, 80% humidity, no wind, dripping sweat, and I show up in service dress blues. So that was quite a shock, but I was the most junior ensign at my command, which was Fleet Weather Central Guam. I had no car at first. It took 4 months before my car made it from Bayonne, New Jersey to Guam. And even worse, there really weren't any women there, and I was single. You couldn't get to Guam in those days unless you were in the military or had special dispensation from the State Department or something. It wasn't the tourist trap that it is now. So I wasn't really looking forward to this at all, but I said, well, okay, I'm going to have to make the most of it. Even though I am shocked, I'm going to look at the professional training aspect. And so I learned about Western Pacific meteorology and forecasting, and this was during the Vietnam War, so the South China Sea and Vietnam were part of that issue. And eventually they said, we're going to move you to the oceanography department because we want you to forecast ocean things like sea and surf. And I said, I can't even spell oceanography, and now I are one. That's where I spent most of my time on Guam, actually. It was learning oceanography. And there were other things that occurred during that tour that helped me develop. And one of those I spoke about several speeches back, where I wasn't there a month, but President Johnson decided he was going to come out with his entourage, which totally turned the island upside down, kicked me out of my bachelor officer quarters room for a week, and I lived on a ship in the nearby Apra Harbor for a week. That was my first sea duty, by the way. We didn't go anywhere, but still I was on a ship. And I no sooner got back from that, but they said, we're going to send you to training. They're starting to use computers to develop weather forecasts, and we're going to send you to Monterey for 2 weeks. And so that was great. So I got to Monterey, and I really enjoyed it, the course, and I told the commanding officer at the time, I'd like to come back here someday, and I didn't think much more about it. So I continued my tour on Guam. Eventually they sent me to sea for a week on a ship, and believe it or not, this is the real name of the ship. It was the USS Thor. I kid you not, I don't know, maybe it's scrap metal now, but at the time it was a cable layer, and we were tooling around the Marianas. So I got a lot of this training and experience, but even more important, I think, was the island experience that I got. I got a lot of travel. I got to travel to many of the Micronesian islands. I got to Japan once, to Taiwan twice, the Philippines. So I pretty much covered much of the Western Pacific, and I learned a lot just from those travels. Also, I got to meet people on the island and got involved with the culture on the island, which I found really changed my life and my approach to the future of my life. So that was good, but perhaps the biggest thing I did on Guam is I joined a Toastmasters Club. There were 3 Toastmasters Clubs on Guam, and the one I went to was met on an evening for dinner, and it was a 45-minute drive. As I said, nothing's very close to anything on Guam. It was a great club, and 4 other naval officers at the bachelor quarters and we all went together and carpooled every week. And as I say, I'll talk about that club in another speech. But it was obviously a portent of things to come. So here you have, okay, the visit to Monterey, you got Toastmasters, there must be something that drove where I am today. Well, that's going to take several more speeches to get that far. Next time we'll talk about Monterey and Toastmasters.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. Fellow Toastmasters, welcome guests, and of course, Carl. Today, Carl gave a number 4 speech, How to Say It, entitled Guam is Good. So, first of all, Carl is a fabulous storyteller. I don't think anyone can argue with that. And of course, he has phenomenal stories to tell. In working through the CC manual for, what is this, the 3rd time now? 4th time, he's on a quest to weave the different projects together into sort of one long story, which I think is a really interesting tactic, and I think it's working well. So he started this speech today with, you know, sort of something you'd see on a TV episode on the previous episode. Gave a little synopsis of what he spoke about last time, and I think that worked well to sort of set up where you're going. The purpose of this particular speech was to use short, simple words. Okay, special dispensation is probably one you could shorten into something different. That was kind of the longest word I found in there. Avoid jargon. Detailer, OCS, dress blues, there's a little bit of military jargon going on in there. And my biggest issue I had was with the short sentences, because I started counting about halfway through, and I caught 6 sentences that started with "and so." And Carl Thormeyer likes to tell other people in his evaluations they shouldn't start a sentence with "and so."
Karma's
So I
a
just
bitch.
had to say that. The other part of the objective was to use metaphors and alliteration, which you did pretty well. You turned the island upside down when the president came. The alliteration, sea and surf, I caught that was a good one. I think you could probably use a little bit more of those. What you did really well was creating a really vivid description of what was happening. So you were dripping in sweat wearing that uniform, and one of the other objectives is to have your speech be memorable and, as it says in the manual, sparkle with energy. And I think Carl perfectly embodied that in his speech. I'm looking forward to more. Thank you.